This is AUGforums.com Real Talk. First, thank you to our sponsors, APS Payments, Kenzium, and DataSelf. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking on each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Every click helps to support this podcast. My name is Tim Rodman, and I'm coming to you live on Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. This is episode number 42. Tim Patton, ICT Director at Sam Mouldings, sharing his Acumatica customer story. So we've got two Tims on the episode today, and Tim Patton, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Tim. Probably unusual having two Tims, but we'll give it a go and try and avoid sort of double talking to each other, calling ourselves Tim. So my name is Tim Patton, ICT Director of Sam Mouldings. We're based in Antrim in Northern Ireland. I've literally actually just passed my 20th anniversary with the company on the 5th of March. We've been an Acumatica user from 2013. We were an early adopter. I guess we just sort of passed our 8th anniversary with the product. We went through sort of a pretty stringent selection process. And to choose Acumatica, we were using a product called eFax, which is an on-premises based ERP product. It was a sort of fixed licensing model, maximum 11 users. Quite expensive to run, and it was developing wise. It was sort of heading off into a cul-de-sac. So we went to the market, and not really well accepted, and it was a bit of a leap of faith. So whenever I took a look at it, we did our due diligence, and I spoke to people in New Zealand and in Asia and America about Acumatica, and decided and persuaded the rest of the board that it was the right way to go. So we started the financial year in 2014, we made the switch to Acumatica. I think the biggest challenge we had was not with Acumatica itself, because the hosting side of things was great and we got that up and running fairly quickly. There was two things we sort of were challenged with. One was the legacy systems we had in place, and secondly, the amount of training which I sort of put in place, which could have been doubled up, tripled up, to make this transition a lot easier. I think
I'm curious, back on the selection side of things, what was the main thing that stood out to you? Especially back in 2013? You know, Acumatica just announced they've got around 10,000 customers now. Back in 2013, my guess is maybe 500 or less. You know, back then, what stood out to you to brave embracing a very new product at the time?
It was 500 or less, but it was even fewer based in the United Kingdom and in Europe. I think the product was well adopted in America, and sort of the specific side of things. I spoke to a couple of people in New Zealand and Australia, but there was very few people in the UK actually using the product. But in terms of when you sat down and looked at the model and did some due diligence and did some testing, it just sort of struck the chord, and it sat so well with me. I was keen to sort of embrace the cloud because the cloud made so much sense. We invested a lot of money in sort of the cost of the ERP system plus the hardware. So, you know, that's why I decided to go hosting. And it was a bit of a leap of faith, but and it was sort of made sure to do the due diligence, and everything was sort of, all the boxes were ticked, and everybody I spoke to was, you know, spoke really highly of the product. And the pricing model at that stage was really, really good, as it remains to today. You know, there's the multi-company, multi-user. For the price we get Acumatica for is phenomenal. So, you know, it wasn't sort of a decision we took lightly. And I guess it was a bit of a leap moving to the cloud, but it's definitely worked. I think the other thing that was quite interesting as well, because we were running multiple sites. We have a site in Antrim, our head office in Antrim in Northern Ireland, but we've had a factory in Wales at the time. We were running multiple sites. We have a site in Antrim, our head office in Antrim, Northern Ireland. But we've had a factory in Wales at the time. We have a factory now in Lincolnshire in England. And having the product in the cloud means you're not having to sort of do tricky portals and VPNs and tunnels and so on to try and sort of connect other users into the product. So it sat so well with us. It was excellent.
So cloud. That sounds like the standout for you. And being an early embracer, sounds you probably look like a really smart person in your organization right about now, huh?
Well, I think especially with the situation the world's been through in the past 12 months, we were able to sort of switch we sent our staff home and equipment with laptops, and all of a sudden they were using Acumatica processing orders, generating supplier orders, running sort of the financial model systems straight away without any change. So it just worked.
And about how large is your organization, if you can share, like just a ballpark annual revenue, number of employees, just so we get an idea of size?
Turnover-wise, we're 30 million plus. I should have said actually a bit more introduction about the company. We're a manufacturing company. We manufacture mouldings, skirting board, and architrave from medium density fiberboard (MDF). We turn over 30 million. We have a staff of about 200 people on 2 sites. The bulk of those will be factory operative. And with Acumatica, we've been able to sort of streamline some of our admin processes. We have a customer base, which is primarily split between the home improvement sector and construction. So, we've got our eggs in sort of several baskets. We've had a very successful year because I think whilst people can't travel and go on holidays, people are sort of stuck at home, certainly in the UK, and are keen to sort of make their house a bit prettier and do some home improvement work.
I've been hearing the same thing here in the US, a lot of home improvement work. That's good size. I like that, 30 million. And I'm also curious on your title there, just because I'm not as familiar with titles over in Europe. ICT, what does that stand for?
ICT, Information, Communications, and Technology. So it's I call it the big I and big C, small t. Technology for us, I've always said, is basically a tool to deliver the first 2 bits. Information is key. Sort of one of the things Acumatica drives for us certainly is all about outputs, because the ability we have to extract data from is basically a tool to deliver the first 2 bits. Information is key. Sort of one of the things Acumatica drives for us certainly is all about outputs, because the ability we have to extract data from Acumatica and exchange it with other production systems. We have a bespoke production system called Op Center, used to be called Preactor. And it's advanced planning and scheduling system, which is actually one of the areas that Acumatica is moving into, which is really exciting. I sit on the advisory board from the manufacturing side of things for Acumatica. We're keen with 2021 R2, I think it is. R1's just out at the minute. And R2, sort of the advanced planning and scheduling side of things, is going to be part of Acumatica as well. So it's a product that just continues to sort of develop and grow.
And being a manufacturing company, when you manufacturing, the JAS Systems manufacturing add-on at the time?
We went sort of basically the order to cash cycle, as far as order processing, invoicing, and then the financials. And that was enough to get us started. At that stage, JAS were external to Acumatica, and obviously John Slemmer is actually sort of part and parcel of the key team now with Acumatica. The manufacturing module is something we put in a couple of years ago. We run sort of bill of materials, MRP, and those kind of elements. And we've been using estimating recently as well in terms of quotations and building sort of a very, very tight estimating model for our sales team, which they can actually use to price products for customers. Even though we've a very sort of, the variations can be down to sort of 1 or 2 millimeters. So a customer can come to us and ask for one of our particular profiles or shapes and want a sort of a variation of 1 or 2 millimeters, which we have to generate for them. So the company was built for many years on manufactured orders. So everything the customer wanted, we made. We didn't hold any stock. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've used Acumatica to build a stock range of 100 to 130 products, which Acumatica manages for us and does the replenishment through MRP. So the product, we've taken sort of slow steps over the years. There was no sort of big bang and sort of trying to implement everything in one go. We were very keen to sort of what I call the order to cash cycle, to get it in place first of all, putting orders on the system, making sure they're processed correctly, getting the system to email them out, confirmations out to customers, and then making sure that the bills were sent out in time, the shipment, making sure they're processed correctly, getting the system to email them out, confirmations out to customers, and then making sure that the bills were sent out in time, the shipment documentation and all that kind of thing. We customize in Acumatica. I think the big thing for us and the change we found compared to previous ERP systems, I don't know if you have Sage in America.
Yes, we do have Sage in America.
So the first product when I started 20 years ago, we were using Sage Line 50, which was a very, very sort of small, I think it was a 4-user product. And we switched to the ERP system called eFax. And it was up to 11 users. But the difficulty was you kept bumping into sort of users maxing out, users forgetting to log out. And all of a sudden you were struggling to get people to use the system. Whereas Acumatica being multi-user, multi-company, recently in the last couple of weeks, started using cases for our quality management system. So what we use cases for is any issues with product supply, customer supply, or pricing, or anything to do with quality that might be sort of related to customer service. We record it as a case, and then our quality manager manages that and attributes tasks and events and preventative actions to our various staff members. And again, it's another element that sort of feeds into Acumatica. And everything sort of goes together to sort of what I call a customer-centric approach. So we have a team of sales, regional sales managers based around the UK. And obviously with Acumatica, they've got access to their mobile phones and laptops to information related pertaining to customers. So if they're about to go in to do a call with a customer, or if they're doing a call with a customer, they can fire up their laptop, checking the customer's orders, checking. So if they're about to go in to do a call with a customer, or if they're doing a call with a customer, they can fire up their laptop, checking the customer's orders, checking any cases or quality issues, and just have information at their fingertips. Really important. That's why I come back to my title. It's ICT. It's a big I. Information is key. But it's getting that information out of the system and making sure people know how to use it.
I like that. Yeah, I think case is an unutilized area of Acumatica. Of course, now I think it's broken off from the CRM, if I recall correctly. It's for new customers, it's priced separately, but getting more and more information into Acumatica is always a good thing. Give you that one source of the truth. That's interesting. You're using it for quality stuff in the quality area. I'm curious if you then generate something off of that, like a return, or does it just live on its own, a return, or does it just live on its own as a case without being attached to anything else in Acumatica?
We would generally we attach it to a transaction, because usually the case is related to one of the most common examples is a pricing error. We have a very complex product range, as I was saying. And if a price is entered incorrectly, a price that isn't sort of a standard product, it generates a case. And we then sort of looking for the transaction where that was recorded, which could be everything comes back to the sales order. So we make reference to the sales order and the subsequent shipment and invoice. We reference the credit that's gone to the customer. And if the customer wants, we have to, in the cases where we have to uplift the product, we do a goods return paperwork. We get that linked as well. But the big thing is, it's all very well sort of recording these, but the big thing we're looking for is two things. One is correct with the service level, and the second thing is preventative action. Obviously, if this happens 3 or 4 times, then the quality manager is sort of seeing this trend and using Acumatica to sort of monitor this, and what preventative action can we take to sort of make sure it stops. It's like the old adage, find a problem, fix a problem, stop it happening again. That's really what we're using cases for, but it's a perfect tool for doing that.
And that way it's not just buried in people's individual emails. You have it all in one central place where you can actually look at that data easily rather than it being siloed in individual inboxes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been designing this for a while, and the beauty of it was that the technology stack that we had to put in place to make it work was pretty much built into Acumatica. We had to do a little bit of customization, some generic inquiries to bond the thing together. But fundamentally, the technology was there. It's really down to the process. And as you said, Tim, what we were using previously was email to send a scattergun approach to say there was a quality issue, and we sent it to everybody so everybody knew about it, but nobody did anything with it. So with Acumatica, because all our users are in Acumatica, we attribute tasks to people and say, say if it's a pricing issue, then the sales manager responsible for the team that make the error will have a chat with him and make sure it doesn't happen again.
So not just cases, but you're using the tasks in the CRM area to assign things to each other and have it all in one place.
We do, and we use one of the most powerful bits that I really like with Acumatica is the 365 Microsoft Exchange link. So we bond that like is the 365 Microsoft Exchange link. So we bond that together, and we rather than sort of have the task solely in Acumatica, we send out a task notification to the user's Outlook. So it goes in as an event and it's time bounded. So we're expecting an action, and if the action isn't performed within a certain period of time, then it escalates to the manager.
Oh, interesting.
So
I haven't used that much yet personally, but that exchange link has always interested me. So I'm curious there, it sounds like it's Acumatica that triggers the task, and is it something that is triggered automatically, like with a business event, or does someone manually go assign a task to someone and then it just automatically syncs into their Outlook? How does that work?
It's a combination of both. The business events and notifications we would send to a particular team of people depending on the case team. In terms of events, the events can be quite specific and unique to sort of various cases. So for the most part, the quality manager would allocate the tasks. If it's a pricing error, the customer has to be contacted. So the salesperson responsible has to make contact. So we'll create a task for that person to go and make contact with the customer, smooth the waters over, explain the error, what we're doing about it, and expect a response.
And then how do you measure if there's a response? Does someone actually just interact with their Outlook and not even have to go into Acumatica to mark it done or complete or take notes, whatever? How do they actually interact with it?
The 365 link is a two-way one. So if a customer's been sent an email, the customer replies. There's an Acumatica for 365 Outlook 365 now, which sits as a little function in the toolbar, and all we have to do is click on it and add it to the case. So it's incredibly simple to make sure that the data sort of flows properly. The reason we use Outlook is because that's the tool that everybody has open, basically 365. Everybody lives in their Outlook, certainly in our company. Email is sort of so important to us still. We use it sort of a lot still for getting orders from customers and communicating with customers.
So it sounds like you're using both. You're using the Exchange sync on the back end, but then you're also using the Outlook add-in. Is that right?
That's
Both?
correct, yeah.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I always wondered if the Outlook add-in sort of replaced the Exchange sync, but it sounds like you found. I was wondered if the Outlook add-in sort of replaced the Exchange sync, but it sounds like you found use cases for both at the same time. Maybe for the generating it on the back end with the Exchange sync, and then on the front end, users interacting using the Outlook plugin.
Yeah, we use the Exchange sync. We use the tasks and events. We don't use email sync because the emails get hidden because you have to must go into a specific Acumatica folder and then be managed separately. However, if a customer sends an email back, if Acumatica recognizes the customer, whenever you click on the add-in in Outlook, it will then know to attribute it back to a particular case or a particular business account in Acumatica. So it's quite a strong link. It's something we've been trying quite a lot. We also think we use it for, our sales team use it for sort of CRM functions and keeping tabs of that with our marketing department. And that was a tool to let everybody, the management, see what the plans were, where the guys were going, and what their plans were for the coming week.
So on the events, which translate into your Outlook calendar, sounds like that's more of a flow from calendar entry that then gets synced into Acumatica, so you have all that information in one place.
Yeah, again, I keep using the term customer-centric, which is probably really poor English, but it's the best way I can describe sort of trying to get everything into one place. But at the same time, if I had to ask our sales guys to sort of go into Acumatica every 2 seconds to sort of update an event, update a sort of a record or mid notes in, they would sort of struggle to do it. But because we can do it with our Outlook and do that sort of synchronization, it just works because they live in their Outlook. But because we can do it with our Outlook and do that sort of synchronization, it just works because they live in their Outlook.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to get salespeople to do anything in any system. It's got to be as easy as possible, right? So that Outlook add-in, I'm just curious to keep digging into it because it sounds like you're really using it heavily. So it sounds like you're doing the calendar, syncing that into Acumatica. Maybe talk a little bit more again about the follow-up tasks. So you'd have Acumatica create a task, and when it syncs over to Outlook, what comes with it? You said being customer-centric. Is Outlook aware of a specific opportunity or a specific business account? What's there in the link so that when they complete that task, it comes back and is associated with some Acumatica records? They complete that task, it comes back and is associated with some Acumatica records.
It brings the business account across and details about the location. Then it has the generic stuff that you tend to find in the notes side of things, images and bits and pieces. But we sometimes, one of the things we're using with the cases, just to go back to that side of things about the Exchange link, is a picture tells 1,000 words. So say a customer receives product and it's been damaged in the lorry during transit. We attach the picture and that flows through to the sales guy so everybody can see straight away, rather than sort of try and write down, the lorry fell over and the product fell off the lorry and stuff. If you take a picture, all of a sudden you've got irrefutable proof that the product was packaged badly, was strapped badly by our team, or maybe the haulier that was delivering it sort of made the mistake, maybe a fork truck at the customer's end.
To what I assume would be a task in Acumatica that syncs over to the salesperson's Outlook.
We haven't done the mobile app yet. We're dabbling with that. We say cases in terms of is a big step for us. We had a separate legacy database which had been running for many years, and everybody hated the product. It was an awful thing just because it had gone end of life and beyond. And cases we're trying to sort of keep lean and streamline. But the fact that we can attach images is phenomenal, but it's done basically in Acumatica. So whoever creates the case is attaching the images and taking those sort of bits and pieces and that data and putting it together.
So is the person on site, is the customer just taking it with their phone and then emailing it to you? Or how does the picture get?
And taking those sort of bits and pieces and that data and putting it together.
So is the person on site, is the customer just taking it with their phone and then emailing it to you? Or how does the picture get from the physical snapping of the picture in Acumatica?
At the moment, it's just drag and drop. Because obviously you can drag and drop straight. You can go to sort of the attachment side of things in cases and attach the image, or you can just open up your file explorer and just drag and drop it across. So that's as simple as it gets. One thing I'm keen to sort of look at is the customer portal, because cases is available to the customer in the customer portal.
Yeah, give them more access to their own information, right? Instead of having to rely so much on email.
Yeah, I was talking to the sales director about this, and it's obviously
their own information, right? Instead of having to rely so much on email.
Yeah, I was talking to the sales director about this, and it's obviously we're like any business these days. It's all about finding the competitive edge, and small things like information flow between us and our customers, particularly sort of our bigger ones, whether it's sort of repeat orders or information on cases to do with product damages or product issues to do with our service. If we can allow the customer to sort of connect into our systems through the portal, which is beautifully designed, actually, when you sort of see how that's put together as a separate entity, it allows them to sort of go in and sort of check out how things are moving with cases and so on. The other thing you've got to be careful of is you're actually you're setting yourself up, and if you're going to do that for a customer, you must make sure it's done properly. So to happen, if you say you're going to do something, you make sure it's done.
Yeah, what about on the task side of things? You mentioned the task created in. I'm still curious to dig into that a little bit more. The salesperson got a task now in their Outlook, and you said they were using the add-in to link. Let's say their task was simply to send an email or make contact. If they send the email, was there some kind of link between the task and the email they send, or they just manually know that the task is telling them what business account? And so when they send the email and they link it up, they just link it up manually to a business account in Acumatica. Is that how it works, or is there more of a link between the task and the email?
At the moment, they're linking it manually, but what we're looking to do with the 365 add-in, the Acumatica add-in, is when any communication that comes back, but because of the link with Acumatica is live. Whenever you open that and click on the Acumatica add-in, it knows that it's a live business account. It's a particular case, or it's related to an employee. And you can actually sort of link that back directly into Acumatica from Outlook. So that's how we're planning to get it back. It's so if we want to record the communication, so the task is generated, the sales guy takes an action, the customer responds, for example, but it comes back into the sales guy's Outlook. To get that message back into the case or back into Acumatica, we're using the 365 add-in to do that.
That's really cool, and I like how you didn't take the big bang approach. You took the phased approach, starting with just the order to cash back in 2014, and then you go into manufacturing, and now you're into. You didn't take the big bang approach. You took the phased approach, starting with just the order to cash back in 2014, and then you go into manufacturing, and now you're into cases and the CRM area more heavily. If we step back in time a little bit, back to the manufacturing a couple of years ago, you mentioned estimating and bills of material, if I recall correctly. And I'm curious on that. Were you using the bill of material as like a general structure so you could copy it into an estimate and refine it from there? Or do you have use cases for both, like a traditional bill of material that doesn't change and the estimate that is that fine-tuned a few millimeters off or whatever it was? Do you use both, or is that the bill of materials more of a foundation for your estimates?
Bill of materials is more of a foundation, but we do use both scenarios. Our manufacturing process, the large boards are cut into lengths. What we call the molding process, where a machine puts a profile onto the lengths, and then we have a finish we put on. They could go out unprimed, they could be primed, they could be what we call fully finished, which is ready to put on the wall, put on the doors, or they could be veneer wrap, which is like a real wood effect. So we sort of looked at estimating, we looked at sort of bill of materials, and the one thing that really helped us with it, certainly the bill of materials side, is customers want the same product, but they want it packaged differently. And some of them, if we have the same product would go to the construction site, just bundled up, ready to be fitted. But we might send the same product to a DIY store. If it goes to the DIY store, it needs to be shrink wrapped in polythene. It needs to have a product label with a barcode, and it needs to be merchandised properly. So all these challenges, you take the same to be shrink wrapped in polythene. It needs to have a product label with a barcode, and it needs to be merchandised properly. So all these challenges, you take the same product, but depends on who you sell it to. Obviously, the bill of materials, the product itself does change. Before we started using Acumatica, we were using sort of very specific product codes. And in that scenario I was talking about, we had with the same product, two different product codes, depending on how it was going to be packaged. So say, for example, one customer wanted a label and one customer didn't. We actually ended up with two product codes, the same product, but one had a label on the reference. And you can see, obviously, that sort of generated masses and huge amounts of overhead and sort of poor data management within the system. So with Acumatica, we actually sort of started looking at attributes, huge amounts of overhead and sort of poor data management within the system. So with Acumatica, we actually sort of started looking at attributes. So the core product is a product that goes through the sawing operation, the molding operation, and the painting operation. And the attributes are customer dependent. So whether they want it shrink wrapped, they want it packed in 6s or 4s, if they want a label attached to it, if they want the label to be horizontal or vertical, all these things are attributes, but it's the same product. So the manufacturing module in Acumatica, with all the attributes and the facilities, and that has let us do that. So we're taking core products, what we call our SAM range, and we're just making small adjustments to them, to attributes.
So the attributes there, that wouldn't be an item attribute. Would it be a production order? It probably wouldn't even be a BOM attribute, right? Would it be a production order attribute? Where does it live?
It's a production order attribute, sales orders for standard products for customers, and then a more specific bespoke ones that we're looking for with estimates, because we can actually bond the estimate into a sales order. We have a blend of stock products, manufactured order products, which are repeat orders, and estimated products, which the customer sort of wants to speculate on. So actually, Acumatica has got very, very sophisticated in terms of sort of letting us simplify the way we communicate with customers.
Yeah, with estimates, you're not having to have millions and millions of bills of material for every possible permutation, but you can have a core foundation of BOMs, and then you do all your permutations on top of that with the estimate to save you the overhead of maintaining all the BOMs, like you were saying, right?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, the manufacturing module is becoming really, really slick. I'm really excited to see where it goes in 2021. That's correct, yeah. I mean, the manufacturing module is becoming really, really slick. I'm really excited to see where it goes in 2021. As I said before, we still use a separate scheduling product called Op Center. It's a product done by Siemens, but now with Acumatica becoming a bigger player in the manufacturing software, manufacturing scheduling and APS scheduling world, we're keen to sort of see a potential of moving our scheduling into Acumatica.
Before we talk about scheduling more, I'm curious, when you said door frames, it makes me think product configurator, but is product configurator involved there at all, or it's just estimating?
Configurator, we have done some modeling with the door frames. We had a company that manufactured, and we were going to use a configurator for them, but we actually closed that company down. So we have not used it in anger. We still use estimating, but the configurator would be perfect for that.
But in most cases, it might be too rigid. You need the estimating that allows you to, it's more of a soft build, right? You can just add in whatever you want.
It's really the flexibility of estimating in Acumatica that gives us the win. The rigidity of a configurator is not really for us in terms of the way our products work and the way our customers work. We have a set of customers who order sort of a tight product range. We have other customers who don't order the same thing twice. So it's quite challenging in terms of, we're not a sausage factory. We don't manufacture the same thing every day. And it's why our scheduling becomes more challenging, because you've got a blend of stock management, manufacturing for stock replenishment, and you've got customer specific orders. Our product is quite heavy and bulky, and it needs we call them 40-foot trailers, articulated lorries to deliver it. So we would deliver maybe 30 to 35 40-foot trailers a week of product across Europe and the UK.
And so you're using an outside system for scheduling currently. How does the data pass back and forth between Acumatica and the scheduling system?
We transfer the data out using SQL queries. One of the things, going back to the start and revisiting sort of the decision to go with Acumatica, couldn't re-engineer all of our legacy systems to consider, to go live. So I was able to sort of connect our legacy systems into Acumatica's SQL database and keep them going. Some of them are still going, actually, which is a bit of a challenge, but we're gradually sort of moving away from the old Access databases. We still use quite a bit of OData links into Excel. And I thought about this quite a lot, but I've actually decided it's okay, because people like Excel, people like to manipulate data themselves. And if we are sort of controlling the source data and allowing them to sort of add value to it, then that's okay. And the fact that Acumatica on most screens has an Excel option to either import or export data, shows the fact that, because I had this argument, that's okay. And the fact that Acumatica on most screens has an Excel option to either import or export data, shows the fact that, because I had this argument, well, not an argument, discussion with a former work colleague, and he said everything should be in Acumatica and nothing should be outside it. And I know there's people who have lots of views on this, but I've sort of softened this, because I tend to believe people add value. And there's great tools like Power BI and other things which, Acumatica is always going to be our core, but I'm happy for people to sort of go manipulate and sort of exchange data with other products using sort of SQL queries or OData.
I had the same experience with Excel. I fought it for years, and eventually I realized as long as you don't use it as a database, as a data storage tool, which it's terrible at, and as long as you only use it as a reporting tool to report on the data, it rather than fight it, you empower exactly the same experience. Eventually, you just realize it actually is a good tool as long as the data is coming out of one central place and it's not a bunch of linked spreadsheets, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So we don't, to move data out, we control the data movement across into Op Center, the scheduling, manufacturing scheduling tool, and we use SQL queries and SSIS processes to move the data back and forward. So what we're basically looking to do, our shop floor data capture system, we have 27 terminals in the factory. and the scheduling tool that sends the data down and the data appears on the screens. But what we're going to do now, we're actually going to switch across to the work centers and the workstation in Acumatica.
Kind of same idea. You're going to phase in, you're setting yourselves up to use Acumatica scheduling.
That's correct.
You said you move the data back in, so I assume you move in, you update the production order estimate dates back from the scheduling tool, and you are on SaaS though, right? So you must still have access to the ODBC driver or something that gives you access to the SQL database in the SaaS environment.
Yeah, we use ODBC extensively. To move
so for anyone listening, I don't think new customers have that option, but you're probably grandfathered in. That's the advantage of being around since 2013 on Acumatica.
Yeah, there's probably sort of the Acumatica police probably knocking at my door, coming in and saying, guys, you know, you can't stop, you have to stop using this and start paying for it.
But it's critical to making your business work right now, especially with still having the legacy stuff lying around, which is not unusual.
I think certainly if it's not available, certainly it's an option worth considering. I didn't realize it wasn't part and parcel, maybe some of these features of standard Acumatica now. I think the experience of using Excel as a slice and dicing tool is really important, and of how you get the data out. I mean, obviously you can use OData, you can use generic inquiries. You know, there's ways to do that, so which is controllable and manageable, because actually, as long as you manage and control the quality of the data going out, that's half the battle. In terms of the data moving back and forward, I'm not terribly happy sending the data out of Acumatica into the scheduling tool now, and that's one of the things I really want to try and resolve and get to, you know, go back to sort of a one-stop shop, I call it, which is getting Acumatica to do all the key functions, the scheduling, and come back to the order to cash cycle. And the scheduling tool in Acumatica is our current scheduling system. The Op Center tool has the planning side of things is run through a Gantt chart, and that's one thing that Acumatica doesn't have at the minute. I think it's something that's on the timetable for this year, possibly 2021 R2. Certainly to see sort of an early release of that, but it'll make a huge difference to sort of our ability to sort of make a change. And that'll be one of the most exciting things for me this year.
And the Gantt chart is, I assume that's not just looking at the information, it allows you to interact with it as well and save it.
It is. It's the key part of it, because whenever you're scheduling, I've not my 20 years with the company, I've sort of seen a lot of people scheduling, and you can. It's the key part of it, because whenever you're scheduling, I've not my 20 years with the company, I've sort of seen a lot of people scheduling, and you can create what I call a push button schedule, where you push a button and based on constraints and parameters, the system will build a schedule for you. But then there's the knowledge of the scheduler themselves, what I call the intervention tools, which is where on a Gantt chart they can start to drag and drop information based on real world scenarios, like, you know, Tim's off sick today, or Tim hurt his finger, so he's going to run at 80% efficiency. And those are the things that make a difference. So a push button schedule will get you 70% efficiency, but if you could add the extra 20-30%, you know, you need a scheduler, you need sort of decent intervention tools, which is where I hope Acumatica goes this year.
And that current scheduling tool, is that a desktop tool, or is it a web browser based tool?
Well, with me, you know, I wanted to get things in the cloud. Having said that, you know, you sort of question why you need to put it in the cloud, because it's only used in our factory. From a storage side of things, from a security side of things, preferable to have it in the cloud, and something we'll look at whenever that becomes available. But my preferred option is to get it inside Acumatica. So the order is estimated, the customer agrees to buy it, the order is generated, it moves across into production as a production order, it's scheduled in Acumatica, completed, goes back into stock, shipment's created, invoiced, and then the customer pays the bill. I really am keen to Acumatica to sort of manage all that life cycle.
Yeah, I was curious on whether it's desktop or web browser, because as I understand it, that is one of the challenges of a browser-based application. This application is being able to do that type of Gantt chart, something that's interactive and yet something that is still visually really appealing. I think web browsers are just behind on that, right? Desktop applications just do that better right now. And I think maybe, be interesting to see what Acumatica comes up with, but I know they have had challenges in the field service area with that, with the scheduling tool there. And my understanding, I could be wrong on this, but my understanding is it's not just an Acumatica challenge, it's just a web browser challenge, right? That desktop tools are just the technical side of things makes them more adept at handling things like a Gantt chart and something that's interactive where you want to move things around. And then you also have to decide, well, am I going to try to do auto saving, which could be a ton of data going back and forth and make it too slow to use? Or do I need a manual save with a new functionality? And I think when you get into that, that's where desktop applications still outshine web browsers. So it'll be interesting to see, Acumatica being such a product company and loving to dive into those technical issues. Be interesting to see what they come up with there.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly the overhead in terms of machine performance was something that we've struggled with over the years. So we've thrown memory and solid state drives as the thing because it is crunching a lot of numbers. We have certainly whenever we were dealing with sort of the legacy product code side of things, and every product has a separate product code, it was massive, huge amounts of data, and we did someday. And the amount of information that's been processed was ridiculous, and certainly it just wouldn't have sat well in the web browser. I do sort of challenge the thinking. I do sort of challenge the thinking with schedulers sometimes, because going back to what I was saying about a schedule, push button scheduler is 70% efficient. Sometimes I sort of look at what happens whenever that schedule is committed and sent down to the factory. If the operator's a little bit late coming in, and all of a sudden your schedule is out the window because your efficiencies drop because the circumstances. If the guy can't find a particular product on the trolley to bring forward and start manufacturing it, then your schedule's delayed. We all live in the real world, so is 70% efficiency acceptable rather than sort of try and force this extra percentage out,
Well, it sounds like they're thinking to your bill of material versus estimate, right? And that you need some type of core structure, but then, you need the flexibility on top of that. And it's a question of
managers. And it's their job to take the list of orders and say, this is what we need to get out today because these are going to the lorry at 6 p.m. Here's a breakdown, here's a rough schedule. Here's when the things here's how long they're going to take. So, this is the 70% to the 60% efficient schedule. It's up to you to drive the factory and deal with the real world situations that happen and make sure that these orders are ready to go out the door.
And what is the cadence for the scheduling? Is it done daily or weekly?
Originally for many years, we scheduled for a shift. We were very blinkered in our scheduling. We took the orders across and we scheduled for the next shift, which for day shift would be a 12-hour shift, night shift, 12-hour shift. And a new schedule was done after every shift. But now we schedule for 72 hours, which really lends itself to capacity planning. Night shift, 12-hour shift, and a new schedule was done after every shift. But now we schedule for 72 hours, which really lends itself to capacity planning and planning ahead. And that's just, it's one thing sort of where Acumatica can do a lot of help us with an awful lot with, because I genuinely believe as the scheduling gets stronger in Acumatica, because it has all the information about. I often say to people, Acumatica looks after the raw material side of things as well, and all the suppliers, and it knows how many, much of each sort of element of raw material is there through, so it's actually managing things very efficiently, but we're actually taking the data out of Acumatica to put in a different tool to do some planning to send it back. So we're actually sort of, it's not the most efficient way to manage this, our end-to-end processes.
But your 72 hours, that would be your things, dragging them around, making adjustments for unexpected things that happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, simple things. For example, there's been a couple of storms recently, and because we have to ship things across the Irish Sea, the boats don't sail. So all of a sudden you've got issues where, you can't get product to customers, or, you move things down to the south of Ireland because, they go by road, so you can definitely get those out. Or perhaps you sort of, adjust your schedule. It's a real world situations where you're able to sort of make adjustments.
Now, that sounds really interesting, and really, I can see why you're keen on getting into Acumatica more, because, coming back to that customer-centric philosophy that you were making that point earlier, when you start delivering that information to customers, that's just such a huge differentiator, right? But the data's got to be right, also to your earlier point, before you do that, and you got to disinformation, right? But it sounds like you're really thinking on how to set yourself up for that, and be as transparent as possible with your customers. And people always like that, right? It's not just, did it get there late, but if I at least knew it was getting there late, that's a lot better, right? And that comes down to that transparency, and not just doing things with emails as you remember them. Otherwise, you can't scale up to be a large organization if everything's having to go through someone's memory and through their email.
That's correct. I mean, taking the manufacturing cycle, the raw material side of things, which for us, I talked about labels. If a customer expects their product, there's one of the DIY superstores over here called Wix. I'm not sure, I don't think you have them in the US. They have very fancy labels go on their product, but they're essential because they're run through their EPOS till systems. And we can manufacture all the products, but the label isn't there when we cancel because they're run through their EPOS till systems. And we can manufacture all the products, but the label isn't there when we can't ship it. Acumatica knows and manages the orders and raw material side of things, and manages stock levels and replenishment, things like that. So, we can, telling the customer we're short of labels is probably not relevant, but telling the customer, because of a shortage, your product's going to be a little bit late is better than just not turn up.
You mentioned labels there. I'm curious, are you using the device hub at all in Acumatica for printing labels? Is it just Report Designer, or do you have an outside tool? How do labels get generated in the shop there?
We've two different types of labels. We have customer labels, which are pre-printed and bought in, and that's dealt with through a business account as a vendor. And the stock managed correctly, and it's built into the bill of materials. So in a pack of 6, each piece has a label, and the stock managed correctly, and it's built into the bill of materials. So in a pack of 6, each piece has a label, and then it's a pack label. So that goes into the bill of materials. So in terms of stock management and raw material replenishment, that's managed that way. In the factory, we have label printers, which are controlled through Acumatica as well. So they're A4 labels, and all the data is fed directly down to them, and the label's printed out. It's stuck on the product and headed off to the customers. So Acumatica is managing that for us.
Just using the regular Report Designer label printing tool, I assume.
Yeah, it is. It's the simplicity sort of. It's one of those things where you sort of looked at sort of label printing. We used to run in an Access database, and it was linked through to VC, and it was a bit clunky and slowed the process down. And we can put it down as label printing logins for specific tasks down in the factory at various workstations.
Quick time check. We're coming up against the top of the hour. Do you have another 10, 15 minutes to keep going, or do you have another meeting coming up?
No, I'm grand. Keep going. I was going to talk about one other thing we're doing, a project we're working on, Tim.
I was curious on the factory real quick before you go there. Are you using like Chromebooks there, or using full desktop computers? What do people use in the factory, especially as you mentioned, not having the user-based licensing, getting as many people on the system as possible, printing labels, etc. What do you use in the factory for the machines?
we've we've dabbled in various types of machines. We have looked at Chromebooks, we've used tablets and so on, but we've been a manufacturing site and with dealing with sort of timber-based product. It's very, very dusty and quite a harsh environment. So we tend to use from site and with dealing with sort of timber-based product. It's very, very dusty and quite a harsh environment. So we tend to use desktop computers, and we accept there's a certain replacement rate that is quite high through damages and dust getting into things. It's a very dirty environment, so it's we use sort of fairly standard PCs. We would use sort of thin client booting, using sort of RDS remote desktop servers, and it just works because I think the big thing we're asking people to use Acumatica, and Acumatica is such a small footprint to a browser. It's previously in legacy systems we were trying to run sort of access databases in the factory, and that just causes all sorts of problems. But the switch to Acumen, roll out a new facility, a new product, a new element within the system. We're just changing the sort of the user permissions and adding it into the menu system. So
Yeah.
in the factory, it just works really well. And also because we've got two sites, we've got a remote site in England, and we just do the same. So with having the sort of Acumatica being cloud-based, it's a perfect solution.
Yeah, makes sense. Your rollout is not as difficult to a new area. That makes sense, hardware-wise.
Yeah, and the hardware becomes incidental in some ways. I mean, the solution that we've chosen is just suits us. Personally, I'd like to see sort of more robust tablets in the factory, and encourage the guys to be a bit more mobile, because we've obviously with PCs and sort of fixed points within the environment. I prefer to sort of team leaders, cell leaders, and production managers to get them using sort of the mobile client a little bit more.
Yeah, and a tablet might work better for the desk too, right? Because you don't have the big fan on the back sucking it into the computer area.
Yeah, that's it. They tend to get dropped. That's quite a lot. But that's the fact of life. You've got to accept it. It's a harsh environment. It's not conducive to. It's not a perfect place for IT. But we've got.
Well, yeah, it might cost to replace those, but just think of the cost of doing it all on paper and the cost and labor of getting that data into the system that you don't think about. It's still more cost effective, I would think, to have information flowing digitally rather than on pieces of paper.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we tend to sort of have swap outs, so we've got spare computers ready to swap at a moment's notice. If there's a fault, we can do the same with tablets. We can just have them sort of ready to swap.
I'm sorry, before I went there, you were going to say something about projects.
Oh yeah, one of the interesting products we do, obviously, as I mentioned, we sent lots of 40-foot trailers across to Europe and the UK with our product. And one of the most challenging things we've been doing over the years is planning the delivery routes. So we're linked up with a product called WorkWave, which is an ISV of Acumatica. And basically what it does is take the orders and plans them into efficient lorries. So the way in the UK we have to plan our lorries is the lorry has a maximum of 28 tons. So we knew the weight of all our product, and we take all our orders that we have to get delivered for a particular period, say a week. And we take the orders and put them into this product called it has a maximum of 28 tons. So we knew the weight of all our product, and we take all our orders that we have to get delivered for a particular period, say a week. And we take the orders and put them into this product called WorkWave Route Manager, and it generates the routes for us. And then through APIs, we'll write them back into Acumatica. So it's transport planning and load planning. One of the most exciting products. Now we've got cases up and running. That's one of the things I'm looking to sort of develop and roll out in 2021.
With WorkWave, is that a cloud product that takes care of the API connector for you? You don't have to deal with the ODBC and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's cloud-based. Yeah.
Interesting.
The beauty of it is it's graphic as well. So everything's geocoded to longitude and latitude references. So all our customer deliveries are based on
You've got a one-click schedule, and then you can fine-tune it from there.
Yeah, so it's basically scheduling for transport planning. So it takes if we've got 50, 60 orders for customers sitting ready to be delivered, it takes the 50 or 60 orders and puts them into the planning tool, and based on constraints that we feed into the system, primarily the weight of a lorry, which must not exceed 28 tons. It says this is the best way and optimum way to deliver them based on the weight of the product and the date that it expected to be delivered to the customer. So at the moment, planning it on paper and planning in Excel with pivot tables, which, as you can imagine, is a bit of a chore. This new tool is going to do it for us. And basically, we tested it. We took 169 drops, deliveries of product, and planned them in, I think it was about 15 to 20 seconds.
Not bad. So this is something you're really close to using. It's not quite live, WorkWave?
No, not quite live. No, but again, it's I think it's an associated product with Acumatica, and the links work through the API. So moving the data backward and forwards from Acumatica. Again, it's one of those things where a bit like maybe someday, like the jazz manufacturing, it'll become part and parcel of core of Acumatica, or a tool similar to it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Plus, that sort of transport planning side of things it's going to be an interesting step for us. I think the big thing is, personally, I never said there's always a new challenge around the corner, whether it's adopting sort of Acumatica as our preferred scheduling tool, doing the transport planning, rolling out cases which we've done, or even simple things like label printing. Acumatica just works, and it's an amazing tool and sort of done, or even simple things like label printing. Acumatica just works, and it's an amazing tool and sort of moving data in and out and managing things. And certainly, it did the right thing a lot of years ago.
What about on the business side of things? You're almost 8 years in Acumatica, and would you say that the efficiencies that you're gaining and the things that you continue to roll out, these all sound to me like things that would enable the business to to scale. And have you noticed that's come up in conversations that maybe from a management perspective, they're a little more interested in scaling into different product lines or different geographic regions because they're comfortable with how things are running now? How has it impacted the business decision making?
The company that we have we purchased a separate entity. They had their own systems. We were running Acumatica, and it became evident very quickly that we needed to do something. And a couple of years ago, we made the transition where they basically become just a manufacturing site, and Acumatica runs everything now. And that's basically down to our confidence, our sure-footed Acumatica has been for us. We now have a single sales function based in Antrim. We have a remote sales force across the UK. Data flows across the entire company, seamlessly and easily. And to not put to find a point in it, it's largely down to Acumatica and the abilities that it brings to us. We're the authors, but it does the hard work.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, obviously, Acumatica itself is not going to open up business opportunities, right? But I would imagine from a management perspective that based on that experience of acquiring a UK company and moving it into the way you do business, if that was a smooth experience, then they're less hesitant to go do that again, I would think, in the future.
Yeah, we did it in 2 steps because we can spin up a new company in Acumatica. We spun up a separate brand new company. We ran them in Acumatica for a year, and then we sort of consolidated the 2 companies together. So again, even Acumatica gave us that chance to sort of, you can see the themes that I kind of run in sort of gradual implementation. And, there's no big bang. It's sort of taking sort of a sensible qualified and well educated steps and sort of this kind of thing. And Acumatica lets us do that. It's done the same with sort of the acquisition side of things.
That's really cool. I mean, that's the real value right there. That's really cool. I mean, that's the real value right there, right? That a good system, not just a good system, but a well implemented system brings to the table, is enabling new business opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a great journey. It's been bumps along the way. Certainly, we should have done more training at the outset with staff, but you know, I still remind people in 2013, 2014, whenever they came to me and said, "Why did you buy this awful product called Acumatica?" And now they come to me and says, "We couldn't do without it." They absolutely love it, and it's encouraging. With 2 new starts recently in the company, and there was one in finance and finance admin. Whenever they started using Acumatica, they just were blown away. I just absolutely loved it and took it to like a duck to water.
That's huge. That's so huge. I was just talking about skill building, you know. So that's
I always say to people, don't be put off by the name, because maybe this isn't the biggest name in the ERP market. You know, you've got the SAPs and the NAVs and things like this, but you know, people should consider Acumatica and give it a good look at. You know, because it is an absolute quality product, and the speed at which development happens is phenomenal. Like we've put in a few suggestions, and I think some of them have appeared in revisions, and you're getting a minimum of 2 sort of major bumps a year. I think we're 2021 R1 and R2 this year, plus incrementals.
Yeah, you were an early adopter over there in the UK, but you know, I'm starting to see some headlines with Acumatica putting some more focus there, spinning up some. I think it was Pinnacle. That's a big Sage VAR there that now is Acumatica. And
I used to work for them many years ago.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. It looks like they're putting the target as Pinnacle. It's a big Sage VAR there that now is Acumatica. And
I used to work for them many years ago.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. It looks like they're putting the target. It's not that they've really had a target on Sage. I think Sage, just being a big player, anyone who gets in the mid-market ERP is going to run up against them. And you know, Acumatica is going into their home turf now pretty heavily.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll do well. You know, we did look at Sage. There was a different pricing model at the time. We were steered away from the cloud at the time because that was the thinking, and you know, I chose the cloud, and I'm glad I did.
Good line. I like that. Well, Tim, thanks for taking the time today. Any other thoughts that or things you want to mention? Third-party products, etc.
I think that's covered our Acumatica journey. Probably sort of zigzag through it a wee bit, but hopefully it made sense. And if anybody wants to hear any more, or has any questions, you know, I'd be happy to answer any questions to yourself, Tim.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll drop a link to your profile on augforums.com and to your LinkedIn as well on there. And you can let me know after I publish this any other links that you'd like to have included there.
Will do. Thanks very much for your time. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
You too, Tim. Thanks. All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of AUG Forum.